Hi, I'm Jerry Smith, and welcome to Knowledge Dump. When we look at nuclear testing, all we usually see are big bombs, big explosions, and a cool aftermath. We're told of the size of the blast, fission yields, and effects on the environment. However, one component we're usually unaware of is the effect of the fallout on the native people in the area. Nuclear testing within the Marshall Islands, just located in the South Pacific, was extremely detrimental to the native islanders. Over 23 powerful bombs were tested. The most powerful was the March 1st, 1954 hydrogen bomb test. The bomb was much larger than expected and exposed islanders nearby, as well as a Japanese fishing boat, to dangerous amounts of radiation. 3 days after the detonation of the bomb, radioactive dust had settled on the ground of downwind islands to depths of up to half an inch. The United States evacuated many native peoples. Specifically, natives from the badly contaminated islands were evacuated to Kwajalein, an upwind uncontaminated atoll that was home to the large US military base, where their health status was assessed. The native islanders were not permitted to return home due to the contamination levels. It was later proven, however, that the island was practically radiation-free except for the food and crabs. The islanders have been subjected to island hopping from the United States and thus experienced global warming firsthand. In the 1960s, cancer frequency increased among the islanders. For almost 50 years, the United States government studied their health and provided medical care. But the government study ended in 1998, and the islanders were then expected to fund their own medical care and submit their radiation-related health bills to the Nuclear Claims Tribunal in order to collect compensation. In 2009, the Nuclear Claims Tribunal, funded by Congress and overseen by Marshall Islands judges, in order to pay compensation for radiation-related health and property claims, exhausted its allocated funds with $45.8 million in personal injury claims. At present, about half of the valid claimants have died, waiting for their compensation. Congress shows no inclination to replenish the empty fund, so it's unlikely that any of the remaining survivors will ever see their money. Sadly, even to this day, the islanders have not been able to return to their home.
Hi, I'm Fred, and welcome to Knowledge Dump. During the late 1950s and early 1960s, the combination of the United States, Russia, and smaller countries such as France and England began testing nuclear weapons in the Pacific, and thus begins the nuclear arms race, which would shape a generation. So, who exactly were the main contributors to the Pacific testing? Well, the United States and Russia tested a massive amount of nuclear bombs. Over the course of 3 decades, over 315 tests were conducted in the Pacific region. So whereabouts within the Pacific region? Well, the Marshall Islands were where the majority of nuclear tests were conducted by the United States. This includes Bikini Atoll, Enewetak Atoll, and Mural Atoll. Bikini Atoll was located at the north of the islands, with the majority of tests being tested there by the United States. Bikini Atoll marks the first atmospheric nuclear testing. Within the space from 1946 to 1958, 23 nuclear devices were tested at Bikini Atoll, with a combined fission yield of 42.2 megatons. And if you're asking what a fission yield is, it is the overall power created by a nuclear blast. And to put that combined fission in perspective, if 1 megaton is equivalent to 1 million tons of TNT, then think about how much TNT must be combined to equal 42.2 megatons. It is estimated that 50% of fission yields was deposited on local or a regional scale around the islands. When we look at testing at Bikini Atoll, where we see the most damage is at the Bravo testing. It existed as the most contaminating event at the Marshall Islands. It was a high-energy thermonuclear blast on the 1st of March 1954 and has an estimated explosion yield of 15 megatons. Prior to Bravo, little consideration was given to the potential health and ecological impacts of the fallout contamination beyond the boundaries of the test site. Regional fallout over Bikini Atoll forced evacuation for the Marshall Islanders inhabiting the atoll. As well as the testing at Bikini Atoll, we also see testing at Enewetak Atoll. December 1944, locals were evacuated in schedule for the first of many nuclear tests to be done at Enewetak Atoll. 60-meter high steel towers were established on the islands by which bombs were placed at the top and then set off. These were known as near-surface tests. 1952, Operation Ivy occurs, the first large thermonuclear device detonated on one of these high towers. The total thermonuclear blast of the 31st October 1952 test had an explosion yield of 10.4 megatons, vaporizing the island of Enalugab and leaving behind a deep crater about 1 kilometer in diameter. Thus, when we look at testing in the Pacific, the most notable damage was seen at Bikini Atoll and Enewetak Atoll.
Oh, hi! I'm Hugh Gittoes, and today we'll be talking about the geographical, political, and ideological motives for testing nuclear weapons in the Pacific by Western powers. The geographical motives for testing in the Pacific by Western powers are because the Pacific was a large area, it was remote, and it was secretive. From a geographical perspective, the Pacific offered a suitable location to test an unknown force because of its size, it being surrounded by water which caused it to be remote, and it was largely uninhabited and secluded, which would keep it secretive. There are around 60 testing sites used worldwide by many nations including the USSR, USA, UK, France, and China. These sites differed greatly in their geographical features. An example of one of these test sites was the Bikini Atoll in the Marshall Islands, which was administered by the US. This island was used for nuclear testing in the late 1940s and 50s, and was the site for the Bravo test. The purpose of political figures testing nuclear weapons in the Pacific can be narrowed down to 5 reasons: weapons related, weapons effects, safety experiments, nuclear test detection experiments, and peaceful nuclear explosions. Weapons related are tests designed to gather information about how the weapons themselves work. Weapons effects are tests designed to gain information about the effects of the weapons on structures, equipment, organisms, and the environment. Safety experiments are designed to study behavior of weapons in simulated accident scenarios. Nuclear test detection experiments are designed to improve the capabilities to detect, locate, and identify nuclear detonations. And peaceful nuclear explosions are conducted to investigate non-military applications of nuclear explosions. The US, Russia, and Britain experimented with all of these while testing nuclear weapons in the Pacific. The ideological motives for testing nuclear weapons in the Pacific were because the clash between Russia and the US with communism and capitalism. Following World War II, a Cold War started, which was dominated by Russia and USA, who had polarized political views. This led to a strong competitiveness and desire to dominate each other, and this extended to an arms race and a space race. This arms race was a strong political motive behind America's decision to test nuclear weapons at home and abroad in the Pacific. Britain's decision to test in the Pacific was similar to the USA's. The increasing threat of communism and the Cold War highlighted the need to develop superior weaponry to prepare for potential war.
Hi, I'm Egbert Durham, and I will be talking about authorities in nuclear testing. Throughout history, nuclear weapon testing can be divided into 4 chief categories. These include atmospheric, underground, exoatmospheric, and underwater testing. Atmospheric testing is the idea that bombs will be tested and it will affect the atmosphere. Underground testing refers to the testing of nuclear weaponry underground. Exoatmospheric testing is the testing of nuclear weapons outside in space or above the atmosphere. Underwater testing refers to bombs being tested underwater. However, there are many upcoming anti-nuclear explosion testing treaties, such as the Partial Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. Most of these treaties were made because most scientists in many countries see spikes in radiation levels in civilian areas. The Partial Nuclear Test Ban Treaty refers to the 1963 treaty banning nuclear weaponry tests in the atmosphere, in outer space, and underwater, which prohibited all nuclear test detonations unless they were underground. 6 months after the petition went into effect, more than 100 states joined the treaty and 39 had approved it. 60 states have not signed the petition, including the nuclear states of China, France, and North Korea. Early compliance with the petition was effective, although there has been a number of accidental releases of nuclear debris into the atmosphere. Additionally, venting underground tests by the US and Soviet Union have also failed, and radioactive debris has made it into the atmosphere. In addition to all of this, underground tests were not completely contained either, and only minimalised the risk of nuclear radiation. British nuclear testing in Maralinga was conducted between 1956 and 1963. The tests were 800 kilometres northwest of Adelaide. At the time of these nuclear detonations, the area was sacred to the Woomera people in the Aboriginal community. Governments and official authorities removed the local Aboriginal people to allow the bombs to be detonated safely. A 1967 cleanup was attempted to remove radioactive material from the area. The cleanup was not successful, as they still find it unsafe to live in the area.